Solutions to the Dropout Crisis. Addressing the dropout crisis one strategy at a time. Brought to you by the National Dropout Prevention Center with support from Penn Foster and Catapult Learning and in partnership with Clemson Broadcast Productions. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our program, Solutions to the Dropout Crisis. As always, we always want to thank our sponsors, which would be Penn Foster and Catapult Learning, and our partnership with Clemson Broadcast Productions. As you can see, I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sandy Addis, and our presenter, Dean Larry Allen, here in the studio. So good afternoon, Sandy.
Good afternoon, Marty. Dean Allen, we're pleased to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, we have a special program today, special because we love to have people in the studio, and Larry's here, and special because it's Larry Allen, who is very special to us and has been for many, many years, as the National Dropout Prevention Center is a part of the College of Health Education and Human Development. Such a mouthful. Now, the purpose of our program has always been, and the heart of it is professional development. And we have become video in the last few months, but now that we are in this era, we'll be able to do lots of new things. But the heart of it always is providing good quality professional development and bringing to you, our viewers, the opportunity to hear from national experts in a variety of solutions to the dropout crisis. And so that's our purpose today, and we hope that you will all find this program very meaningful and helpful to you. I want to invite the listeners to wait to the end of the program. I don't know if you knew this, Larry, but we have a part at the end which we call the last word. Now, usually we adults like to have the last word, but we give students the last word. But you will be surprised when you see who the special students we picked just specially for you today.
I think I know.
You think you know, and they are fabulous. Call me Mr. Young men.
Absolutely.
Who recently left the public schools to come here to Clemson University, but they can remember what was good about their childhood education, and they're hoping to replicate that as teachers. So wait to the end of the program and see them, and then also see all the credits for all the multitude of people who take time to put this program together for us every month. One of the things that we do encourage is your getting involved with the program, and that is you, the listeners, viewers now. And so if you have questions or comments you'd like to make, we're going to have a segment of time halfway through the program where we will take calls, and email us anytime, and we will have that question period time for you, Larry, about halfway through the program. Needless to say, Sandy and I always have lots of questions.
We do.
So you'll get them, whether they call in or not. But we do hope, because it's a great opportunity for you to engage in a conversation with our dean. I want to also mention to you that we have resources on this very website for follow-up, and this is what makes it good professional development. We have this core program, and then we have all these resources that enhance what you've learned today in the program. So I don't even know where to start with the resources. We got a ton of good ones this time. Didn't you notice that, Sandy?
Yes, we do.
We really do.
We do.
Yeah. And my final comment before I hand it over to Sandy is to tell you how you get to us. It'll be on the bottom of the screen now and then, but we have a toll-free number, 888-539-8859, and then we have our email address. And I watch the phone things. If you wonder what all these things are, this is the phone calls. Here's the emails. And it would be ndpc@clemson.edu. And if you do put solutions in the subject line, I'll see it more easily. So we're looking forward to you participating with us today. And now I think we've done all the preliminaries. We're ready to get started.
We have, Marty. Marty, thank you for that. And it's my pleasure to introduce to our viewers today Dean Larry Allen. Dr. Allen has been at Clemson University for 25 years. He has been the Dean of the College of Health, Education, and Human Development for, I believe, 13 years,
Right.
Dean Allen.
Right.
It's been a great 13 years. The College of Health, Education, and Human Development provides a tremendous number of professionals in both education, human development, healthcare field across the state of South Carolina, across this nation. And Dean Allen is in large part responsible for that. Dean Allen, I know you're here today to talk to us about community education, community involvement in the success of students. And I know that you've had a long and illustrious career. You've done a lot of things that led you to this point of discussion today.
Right.
Bring us up to speed. How did you get to today?
Well, I grew up in a rural community in Pennsylvania, in the Pocono Mountains, and it was a relatively blue-collar community, and we didn't have a lot of excess of anything. It was a struggle for everybody. So I grew up in that type of community, but I had parents that were extremely dedicated to education, and they pushed me very hard to move forward with my educational opportunities. I became a school teacher, and I taught in a very impoverished school district in South Jersey. And that really what started to kindle my appreciation and understanding of what really needed to be done to advance education. I was working in a school district. I was fresh out of college, 22, 23 years old. I was struggling in terms of being a teacher. I was struggling in terms of just my own maturity as an individual. But I had two great mentors, wonderful mentors that I reflect back on those years with them still today, over 40 years later. But it made me realize there that there's no teacher. I take that back. There are some, very few. There are very few teachers that can overcome all the obstacles that young people come to them with. And it really needs to be more of a coalition of people, including the community and the parents, that really brings forth the best for young people and gives them all the opportunities. So that really started to crystallize my thinking. I had, if you look at the normal distribution, you think, unfortunately, I think we predicate the educational process on the very best teachers. If we look at two standard deviations out there, that's the best teachers out there. In the school I was in, I had 2 out of 35 teachers that I would put into that classification. Not that the other teachers were bad, they weren't. They were good teachers. But they were not the teachers that could deal with every child, every student, and make a difference in their lives. We needed help. We needed other professionals to work with us. I was one of those people that needed that help. I left that. I went to graduate school, and about 5, 6 years later, I became the director of the Center for Community Education Development for the University of Maryland. That also really has influenced my thinking on education, and obviously today's discussion about community education really revolves around my early years, even my growing up, my first few years as a teacher, and then taking on that responsibility for the University of Maryland and working with the State Department of Education at Maryland in terms of building community education in our public schools in the state there in Maryland. So that's how I got started. That's been shaping my thinking for the last 40 years. I continue to study and observe and question, and really am quite optimistic about the future. I see a change going on, a quick change that's happening just within the last few years. I'm saying in less than the last 10 years, quite honestly. A change in the thinking where where educators are beginning to look at the educational process as a community model. Certainly we need to continue to enhance what we do inside the classroom, but now we're realizing, or people are accepting the fact that it's the out-of-school factors, the non-school factors that have the greatest influence. I have a slide a little later on that clarifies that. So it's not to say we aren't making success, but we've got a long ways to go in that. So.
We know that you've condensed this into some slides and a presentation. Share with us your thoughts on this.
Okay, let me just, first let me say, this is a slide looking at the last 20 years in terms of educational achievement. And you see this is the graduation rates from 1990 to 2010. And they were pretty stagnant, quite honestly, from 1970 to 2000. 2000 to 2010, we've seen a significant jump. And that's obviously positive. We've made some good changes, but we still, look at it as a nation, we're still at 78.2%. There's still too many young people left behind. There are only 2 states in the country right now that graduate 90% of their students. Most states graduate in the 70s and 80s. I think there's about 20 states in the 80% and another 20 in the 70. We actually have a few states that graduate 60%, and we still have, I believe there's still 1 state that graduates in the 50%. Yeah, obviously, we all know that's not acceptable. We need to be doing and building a better system. Even with the success we've had in the last few years, unfortunately, there's no clarity in terms of why that's happened. There's a lot of different theories out there, a lot of different ideas, but nobody really knows. Included in that dialogue of trying to determine what the success has been, there truly is that discussion of it being more of a community-based system that has helped that process. As I look at education, I really look at the intersection of those 4 elements, and obviously the student in the center. Student-centered education. We have to, we look at this slide, there's not a person on this earth that disagrees with that slide. It's the politically correct thing to say. However, it's a very different thing in terms of how this is truly implemented, where the student is the center of the universe here, and we all work in complementary ways to support the student, including obviously the school, the family, the community, and all elements of the community, and what difference they make in that.
And I don't think it's a coincidence, Larry, that those circles of the school, family, community are equal size.
Right. Absolutely not. If I were to put them in terms of importance, however, that family circle would be much larger. It'd be much larger. As we look at the efforts the last 30 years with the report, the federal report, Nation at Risk, back in 1983, we have put billions, literally billions of dollars of trying to figure out the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of people working together for the welfare of the young people. And it has to be, that's the only solution that I've seen where I've observed and been a part of watching school districts be more successful. It's where they've taken this integrated effort seriously, not just a politically correct thing to say, but to really do that and really engage the community, the families, and making sure that the student is at the center. I use a phrase in the college, I want all of our graduates to be human development specialists first, teachers second, or nurses second. I have nursing in my college as well as public health. I want them to look at the first thing that we're involved with is that human development factor. And so if we think of that first, we are human development specialists first, teachers second in this case. I think that changes the whole complexion of how we approach our jobs.
Dean Allen, in this graphic, the student is obviously in the center, as you've pointed out. I've seen other illustrations of community support for education that focus around the school as the center. This is a different approach, correct?
Right, and I think it's unfortunate that we keep referring to school reform. It really isn't school reform, it's education reform, or even further than that, community reform for educational achievement. The focus is on the student, the focus is on the community, the focus is not on the school itself. It's how we transform the resources of a community to be effective in terms of helping every child be successful. So, I think we put the emphasis on this, have put the emphasis in the past on the school, when we really need to be putting it on the concept of education and what we as a community need to do. And we're seeing that in different places where there really is a coalition of community members, including the parents, obviously, including the business community, including other nonprofits, including other professional groups, as well as the school. And we're seeing the principals and the superintendents and the teachers endorsing that and working together for the behalf of the students.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm not sure it was brought up in the background, but maybe you mentioned it. I'm trying to remember. Was the fact that Larry was the the department chair of Parks, Recreation, Tourism Management, which does imply that out of school time. And so I think that gives you one your different experiences give you this holistic view that maybe others just haven't had the opportunity to have.
And I've had the luxury, and not only was I involved with Parks and Recreation, and really youth development has been my passion forever.
Yeah.
You know, there was no degree in youth development when I was going to college. You became a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. But youth development has always been my passion, and I've been lucky enough to work in a variety of professional areas. I've also been a 4-H agent, you know, which has influenced my thinking on this. I have worked in Park and Recreation, and I've seen where if they can complement what's going on in the public schools through the after-school and summer enrichment programs that are critical for young people, especially those growing up in poverty. Poverty is a critical factor. We can't ignore that, you know, especially in a state like South Carolina where we are. We absolutely have to address that. We're not going to solve the poverty issue, but we need to address the consequences of poverty. And there are serious consequences that must be addressed through a more of a community-based model.
Break that cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of looking at it, you know, these are the areas that have traditionally been looked at, and I've just labeled them the in-school factors. Obviously, we want to continue to build in all of these areas. There's no question about it. They aren't going to solve our problems, though. Better teachers are not going to solve the problem. You know, school leadership is not going to solve it. However, I firmly believe school leadership is one of the critical factors because those are the people that are going to bring the community into the process. School climate is critical. All these are critical. Class size to a certain degree. There are some thresholds there that need to be addressed in terms of class size, and the school facility, obviously the quality of the facility. There's no question that those areas need to be, we need to continue to work on those, but that should not be the total focus of our education reform efforts. We need to move well beyond those, and as my next slide points out here, a quote from Richard Rothman, How to Fix Our Schools. Two-thirds of student achievement is really predicated on what happens outside the school.
Wow.
So if we're putting 90% of our efforts on what's happening inside the classroom or inside the school, but when we know, and there are other authors now that have come out very recently, literally within the last couple of months, that's saying it's even higher than 60% outside, more like 70 or 80% is the influencing factors for student achievement. So we seriously need to look at the dialogue, and one of the things that has, again, nobody disagrees with that figure that I put up, the integration between the school, community, students, and the family. But it's, I heard many times, well, Larry, if we have the time and resources, we'll do those things. You know, it's sort of something we do that's nice, but not seen as necessary. I'd reverse that. I think these are the necessary things. They aren't the nice things. We have to do these. These are the things that are going to help our students, help all of our students graduate, rather than just the elite that we may have in our program or in our programs in our schools. So that has stuck with me. Obviously, it was 2010, but obviously there's been earlier research and even more recent research that addresses that and verifies that situation. Yeah. You know, as I look at the factors that influence student achievement. We can capture them as individual, family, community factors, and I've tried to capture some of these from the research that's out there. You can look at these here very quickly. Obviously, we know parents' beliefs and expectations certainly have a major influence on student achievement. Just parents being supportive of the educational process, providing the support, even if they only have an 8th grade education. I've heard so many times parents say, well, you know, unfortunately I didn't finish school. I can't help my child. That's just not true. You know, but we need to help them understand. We need to build a parent support system, which I'll talk about later. You know, unfortunately too many times parents are only coming into the school when there's a problem. Obviously that's changing. There are efforts now to engage the parents, but it needs to be a much more concerted effort than it is. Physical and mental health, we know that. You know, when I worked in Maryland with the community schools, we had integrated health services on some of our campuses. Makes a huge difference. Family and economic status, poverty is an issue. Poverty is an issue across the board. You know, in the last 5 years, it's even become more of an issue. You know, the gap that exists out there in terms of income levels, and more people suffering from the downturn that we've had the last 5 or 6 years. Persistent absence of violence in a child's life, or persistence or absence of violence.
Yeah.
Certainly these are critical factors that we must address in a very concerted effort and a serious effort. And if we do these things, what I've seen happen, if we're dealing with all of these outside factors, the student achievement scores go up. There's nothing changing inside the classroom. It's what's happening outside the classroom. It's allowing the teachers to do their job more effectively.
I had an interesting conversation a few weeks ago with someone who has an alternative school where the students are obese. It is a residential school. But I look at that physical and mental health thing, and those students needed help in addressing something. They were bullied, and they didn't want to go to school. There was absenteeism. The teacher can't be expected to deal with that.
Right.
That's a specific example that just struck me looking at this, that all those myriad things that affect a young person's life need professionals of other kinds or community members of other kinds to deal with. A teacher just can't be expected to be all everything.
Right, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And let me go to this second slide, and I'll come back,
Okay.
Marty, to that comment.
Okay.
These are more of the community factors that impact student achievement, obviously. Access to various social services, as I've already alluded to, health being one of the major ones, but there are other social services. When we were working in community education, and community education was in its heyday in the 80s and 90s, and for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I do have some ideas, but that's for another discussion. We backed away from that, which is unfortunate. But we're coming back. Now we're coming back to that, and we've got to integrate the other health and human services into the educational process, and that's about there. Strengthen community school connections, absolutely, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Availability of quality childcare. If I were king for a day, or governor for a day, or president for a day, early childhood development would be my number one area of building a comprehensive system. And fourth there, the opportunities for constructive out-of-school activities. After school, summer enrichment are critical factors that need to go on here. So those are some of the out-of-school factors that are truly influencing the success of a child. And I speak of a coalition, a community coalition for education. And those communities where are actually attempting to do that have been extremely successful. It's hard work, but where you have the dedication of the mayor, the city council, the superintendent, the principals, your major stakeholders, some of your local influence peddlers, it's happening, and it can happen. But it takes a concerted effort and an acceptance that these factors that we're talking about are just as important as what is going on inside the classroom. It's not to take away from the quality of the teaching. Absolutely not. We want to continue to prepare better prepared teachers, but we have to build a system that's much broader than better prepared teachers.
We're going to be looking, I know, at some specific suggestions you have in this area after the halftime break. But I did look at that, is it the Coalition for Community Schools site, and that there are locations out there in this country that are doing this very thing, which would help people see what's the big picture of what it looks like, not just this, or this, because there are stepping stones to getting there, I think, and we're going to talk about that. But can you kind of describe what, let's say, your small town or any small town would look like? And I know you had some issues and concerns you wanted to ask about this too.
Exactly, and I'm thinking I could picture a school in a suburban, urban area where there are companies with 100 engineers who can be mentors, and there are all sorts of resources, there are agencies nearby. But what about where the community's poor, they're remote, they're at a distance? How much harder is it to build this kind of coalition, Dean Allen?
Well, Sandy, you have different factors, obviously. Distance is certainly a factor, and I grew up in a rural community. Most of our services were county services, and the county seat was 9 miles away from the little town I grew up in. So there wasn't ready access to that, and certainly there are longer distances than that in many areas of the United States. But it's where the community, it's where the faith-based community, whatever the corporation or the business that's in this community, as small as the local drugstore, or maybe there is a factory in there. All of these people coming together, somebody. And it doesn't have to be the superintendent of schools. It doesn't have to be a principal. I've seen it where the mayor's taken charge. I've seen it where it's been just a community leader, a very engaged member of the community. Somebody's got to take charge and say, folks, we've got to change the opportunities for our students. Let's work together. Even in the most rural communities, that has happened and can happen. But there's got to be a champion, and hopefully more than one, for doing that. But somebody's got to lead that way. And the more we talk about this, the more people are going to be comfortable in taking that leadership role. We have seen it. I've seen it with every conceivably different human being taking that lead. It doesn't have to be the superintendent of schools. It would be certainly important for the superintendent to embrace this. But he or she does not have to lead the cause, but certainly be a part of the effort.
I love what you're saying there, because we have all sorts of people who listen to this program, and they thought, I wish our superintendent did that. I wish our principal did that. But what you're telling us really is that anybody can, and that in this coalition would be various entities in a community. And so if you're in the business sector, or you're in Parks and Rec, or if you're in the mayor's office, or in the school, you could be that person who could take the lead. And these are the kinds of people you want to be sitting around this table to see how we can all work together.
Yeah, it's building, it's that building a common cause and building a common understanding of what the goals are. You know, what do we want to accomplish? We want what do we want to achieve in terms of graduation? And certainly we want them to be career and college ready. That's almost the universal goal for education. I keep saying 90% is reasonable, and certainly there are national organizations that are supporting that as well. I didn't make that up. But I certainly think, as I look at the circumstances out there, unfortunately, we're never going to graduate 100%, but there's no reason for us not to be graduating around the 90% range, or even a little bit higher. And right now, when we only have 2 states in the entire country doing that, we've got to change the system. We've been working on this seriously since 1983.
That's right, Nation at Risk. So we have a goal. Well, Dana, did you have any questions before we go? I know you had a pile.
Well, I do have several. Dean Allen, what's the role of the school leader? The school leaders obviously want this. It may not be occurring in their community, but they would desire it if they understand what you just said. How can a school leader, a superintendent, or principal, how can they convince and motivate those other leaders to take this on as a challenge?
Well, obviously, ironically, it's education. It's making sure people appreciate and really understand when we say out-of-school factors or non-school factors, either way you want to talk about it, and recognizing that these are influencing your ability to be successful inside the classroom. So, we can't ignore them. We can't think they're going to go away, or somebody else is going to take care of it for us. Somebody else can work with us. It's bringing the health professionals into the process. It's bringing the other social services into the process. It's building these teams, and everything I'm saying is being done. Okay, I'm not talking about anything new. There's school districts everywhere around the United States doing these different things. Unfortunately, it's still the exception to the rule, rather than being the rule itself. So everybody, they're all doing these types of things, different school districts. But I think it becomes a matter of education. I also think, obviously, education is one of the most over-scrutinized professional practices out there. I have both education and nursing in my college. I think nursing is scrutinized tremendously, and obviously it needs to be. But I compare the scrutiny of nursing versus education. Boy, I'll tell you, it's pretty darn close. And education may be more highly scrutinized than even the nursing profession. But it's having that communication, having that dialogue with the community itself, letting the community know that they have a responsibility. I'm not taking the responsibility off educators. I hear people say, oh, you're just trying to let educators off the hook. Absolutely not. I'm concerned about the students. And educators, we have good educators across the country. We don't have bad educators. I talk to some people that, make that statement, we need better teachers. Absolutely, we always need better teachers. We need better doctors, we need better attorneys. Okay, that's a given. But we have good teachers. We don't have that normal distribution I was speaking about early. Not everybody's out there at 2 or 3 standard deviations in terms of the really elite teachers. I worked with one. My first 2 years of teaching, I worked with one. I saw what you can do. But he was one out of 35, 36 of us. So it's education. It's realizing that there's a different way of doing it. Certainly some of the federal legislation and some of the state legislation that exists right now, teachers are scared to try new things. So are superintendents, so are principals. And that's unfortunate. As you talk to them individually and privately, they know what needs to be done. But unfortunately, there's a public perception out there in many places that it's still the teacher's responsibility or the superintendent's or the principal's. Absolutely, it is their responsibility, but it's all of our responsibilities.
Yes. Yeah. And on that note, we'll take our little break here and give you all an opportunity to write to me. I've already got an email, so we know we got one coming, and to call in. And if we get this call board working, I'll be able to see who's on the phone. So anyway, but before we do that, the number is 888-539-8859, and the email address is ndpc@clemson.edu. But what we'd like to do now is have what we call the 30-second quiz. So if we could put that up on the screen, we can let us all see how much we've learned so far this morning. Okay, so the question is for you to ponder. The variation in student achievement is mostly attributable to school factors, non-school factors, or luck. This is our quiz. We're tough here at Solutions. We really raise the bar. And while you're pondering that, we have some nice clips. We've got conferences coming up.
We do,
Sandy,
Marty. We have several
You want to
conferences.
tell us about
I'd
those,
love to,
and then
Marty.
we'll have some people tell the audience how they like them. But first, we'll go to you, Sandy.
Sure, Marty, thank you. As a matter of fact, beginning this Sunday, we have a Native American Issues Conference just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, that the National Dropout Prevention Center and Network is hosting. We will be convening approximately 350 educators from numerous states who specialize in working with and teaching Native American youth, and so we have a great conference coming up there. If you still could register, you can walk in and register. So go to our website, take a look at that. Something we're really excited about this summer, June 18 through 20, down at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, we have something called the Diploma Plan Institute. We're finding that a lot of states and a lot of school systems are asking their high schools and middle schools to actually develop specific graduation rate improvement plans, or to have sections in their school improvement plan, or education improvement plan as we should call them probably, where they address strategies for improving graduation rates and reducing dropouts. There's a lot of need for assistance for that type of work, so we have an institute where we're going to have experts in various areas of dropout prevention work with teams from high schools and middle schools from across the country. We already have over 50 individuals registered, a good dozen or so teams. We have room for another dozen teams. So we would encourage our viewers to take a look at our website. We would encourage you to consider sending a team from your school or your district to the Diploma Plan Institute. We'll help you develop a plan to work on graduation rate improvement at your school that they can take back and implement as soon as school begins, Marty.
Well, when we do have those 2 programs, we'll have to get some footage and film from the participants, but we do have some who went to the forum recently. And why don't we hear from them? They'll tell us how great
Let's see what they
the
say.
events are from the National Dropout Prevention Center. Let's have a look at those.
Hi, my name is Allison Reese from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've enjoyed the National Dropout Prevention Conference because it's given me the opportunity to network and learn new ideas from colleagues from across the country.
Hello, I come to the National Dropout Prevention Center conference each year because it's a phenomenal opportunity for you to gain access to experts worldwide. We get to share ideas about what's working in our states. We certainly get to feature several of our expert models that are doing great things within our community. I'm here to especially support JAG South Carolina, which is one of our evidence-based models that has been vetted by the National Dropout Prevention Center, and I'm here to learn more so that we can take it back to our own communities and help our students here in South Carolina.
Okay. Okay. Now let's see the answer to the quiz. I know we loved what they had to say about the conferences. They're always great. But we want to know how good you did. Okay. All right. What do you think? The variation in student achievement, is it attributable to school factors, non-school factors, or luck? What do you think? Let's have a look. Let us reveal the answer now, if you please. No, it's not school factors. I wonder what it is. It's not luck. Well, unless you're lucky that you have people, out there. But if you're having issues, non-school factors are playing a big part, and I think it was like 2/3, which is definitely most.
Good.
Well, I want to get to that question I got on email, and hopefully that the phone line thing is sorted out, because it's always fun to talk to people. But this is from Kimberly, and this is the part of the program where Marty puts her glasses on, because she can't read it otherwise. Dean Allen mentioned getting the business community more involved. And Kimberly would love to get her students involved in apprenticeships. However, many apprenticeship programs will not take students without a high school diploma or GED, and most require that the student is in college or trade school. So how do we get the business community to reach out to our most at-risk students before they drop out? And these are the students who are most in need to have those kinds of experiences, but the businesses are generally and rightly concerned with their bottom line. So is there a way to get around this issue in a scale that could make a difference? Okay, there's a good one for you.
That's a great question, and certainly the apprenticeship process and the concept of apprenticeship is growing again, and thank goodness that it is. And I've seen, actually, even in our own state, I shouldn't say even in our own state, in our own state, we've seen the apprenticeship concept being moved down to the high school level. So originally, I believe what Kimberly was saying was true in the past, that it was normally at the college level or in the technical schools or the two-year institutions. But we're seeing it now. The businesses are recognizing their responsibilities and are recognizing also to get young people involved earlier to make public education more relevant to them, and the apprenticeship process is part of that. Again, it comes back to the education and the business community, and I'm on a statewide task force that is predominantly business leaders. There's a few educators like myself, but it's mostly business leaders that are recognizing their responsibility, and they are absolutely supportive of apprenticeships at the high school level, not just only at the college level or beyond. So I think that's changing. I don't have a quick answer other than education and communication with the business leaders. It's back to this concerted effort. It's not a one try and give up because they'll probably say no, but it's continuing that process. It's hard work what we're talking about. As I said at the start of the presentation, there's no silver bullet. It's hard work, but if we keep at the forefront of our thinking student achievement, student success, access for every student, then that buoys us up, gives us the energy to keep doing those things. People will come around. They want to do the right things. Business communities realize it's to their advantage to make sure more young people are highly educated, getting their high school diplomas, are having the opportunities for apprenticeships, because they're going to become their employees. It makes it cheaper for them in the long run. So I think there's ways of doing it, but again, it comes back to this education, ironically.
Marty, I think Kimberly has a valid point in that it is more challenging and difficult to find placement in apprenticeships, particularly for at-risk youth. The more at-risk the youth is, the more they need the apprenticeship, obviously. But yet the more challenging it is to create an environment, a situation where that youth can flourish and learn. By the same token, though, if a business leader or a corporate executive can realize that the more at risk the youth are that they assist, the greater the contribution they're making to the community. Because if to turn around a very at-risk student through an internship or through an apprenticeship is a major contribution to that child. The child that's not very at risk, has very few risk characteristics, is probably going to be a successful citizen, taxpayer, and contributor regardless. So those business leaders have a heck of an opportunity to make a fantastic contribution by taking on some of the more challenging students.
Yeah, I think this holistic approach, to me, it seems like if we had this coalition together, the business community is a segment of it, as is all these other parts we've mentioned, and each one has a particular role. So if that sort of situation can be created where everybody feels like we're in it together, what can I do, what can you do, and so forth, then that's the thing.
You know, as you talk about the new phraseology out of there, coming out is this collective impact. How do we create collective impact? And one of the things that they keep talking about is mutually reinforcing actions. Mutually reinforcing actions. So everybody has a role to play. We're all seeking the same goals. We have mutual goals, but we also have mutually reinforcing actions to achieve those goals. I was just thinking, Kimberly, a thought that just popped into my head is because I've seen where there's been a coalition between the business community and civic organizations, where the civic organization is serving as mentors for the students to prepare them to go into the business for their work study, or in your case, you're talking about apprenticeship. So you're building the support system for the at-risk youth through the civic organization that's serving in that capacity to work with the business community. So, I mean, those are the kind of relationships that we need to be looking at in every community.
Yeah, and that's the holistic kind of approach. We'll have time for one more question here, which I've got here. I'm not sure that the phones are working, but I do have an email question from Erin from New Jersey, and she's loving the program, and her question for you, Larry, is what are your suggestions for strategies that educators can use to spot the different issues affecting our young people? Because they're in a position to see them, as well as help the children develop the skills they need to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously in the schools yourselves, as you're building teams of teachers working together, you know, your professional communities, you're building those in your systems. You know, some school districts are more in tune with doing that than others, but you know, making sure that's a full complement of your staff, your school counselor, your principal, the teachers, the variety of teachers that have these young people, is sitting with them, going through on a periodic basis, discussing child X, Y, and Z. You know, not to label them, but to help them. You know, not to give up on Johnny, but to help Johnny. It's again, that's the mentality of helping them, and not ensuring their failure, but ensuring their success. So I think that's, you know, one of the most simplistic approaches to take, is building that coalition among the teachers themselves and the other professionals in the school, where it could be the counselor, could be the school nurse, whatever it may be. They need to be a team. If you have an after-school program, invite the after-school professionals in there. Don't exclude them. One of the worst things I saw with community education back 35 years ago was the community ed program, which they considered the after-school program, was isolated from the in-school program. I said, folks, we're defeating the purpose of this. So they know these young people as well as the teachers do. They see them in a totally different environment. They could tell you what might turn Johnny on, what might, you know, trigger Johnny's interest, because they've seen it in an out-of-school situation.
Exactly.
So we've got to build those coalitions.
We got to do it together. We got to do it together. Well, we thank you for our questions, but because of time and so forth, we're going to move on, and we do have the phone number and the email up on the screen. I hear everything's working great, and we will carry on, and perhaps we'll have time at the end for a couple more. But let's go, Larry, on to your next slide.
I've got 8 strategies that I talk about and mention as we build this community coalition for student success. And we've already talked about most of them, so I can go through them relatively quickly. Obviously the first one and the most important is, in my interpretation, a comprehensive and integrated early childhood development effort, 0 to 5. That is absolutely critical.
Well, let's talk about that one, because I think there was an interesting discussion the other day about defining early childhood development.
Right. Well, you'll notice I don't use the word early childhood education. I think the focus, I'm back to I want us all to be child development specialists first, teachers second.
Yeah.
That carries through in my thinking here. 0 to 5, it's got to be all about development. The young people, they'll learn the content, they'll learn the specifics that we need them to learn if we focus on the holistic development of the child. 0 to 5 especially, we want them to be building those self-regulatory skills. We want them to be building that creativity, that innovation. We don't want to focus on the ABCs. That'll come. So I'm much more interested in child development than anything else in this effort. I see, the comprehensiveness and integrated effort. The school district could be the facilitator. The public, the private, all of the support systems that exist out there, they certainly need to be integrated in this process. So I would see, as simple as one of the biggest problems we have with early childhood development centers and efforts is the constant turnover of staff. Why not have the school district be the facilitator for training the staff, whether it's whether it's one of the public schools programs or whether it happens to be one of the nonprofits or private or even faith-based.
Yeah.
Why can't we be the facilitators for that training? And again, everything I'm talking about is happening somewhere. So it is being done in different communities. But it's also, it's building an integrated system, not separating the early childhood folk. I hear so often, well, the young people are coming to us unprepared, but they're in some kind of early childhood experience.
Yeah.
Well, why aren't we talking to each other?
Yeah.
Why aren't we communicating with what is school readiness and making sure that our daycare or our child development center workers understand exactly what's expected. Now, again, I don't want to put the overemphasis on academic efforts. I think total development is going to pay off in the long run more, but there needs to be that kind of coordination. So
that is one of the most brilliant. When we had this conversation the other day, I was so struck because New York City is talking a lot about having the 4-year-old kindergarten, and certainly our state certainly has some policies for supporting that, and it's all over the country. Looking at the 4-year-olds, because kindergarten in a lot of ways has become the new first grade, and they aren't ready. But you've made a point really clearly that the 0 to 3 is very important, and that they are in private or church faith-based settings. Why not help those non-school-based childcare places be in the pipeline and in sync with you? I think when we prepare middle school kids for high school, we're aware what's going to happen in the high school. This is the same continuum.
Right. All the most of these young people are going to end up in your classrooms anyway.
Yeah.
So why not deal with the issue now? We've got, I've been in school districts, unfortunately, and schools are working as hard as they can, but they're having more than 50% of their young people entering first grade that are 12 to 18 months behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
So how do we build that? It's not just the daycare center or the child development centers. It's also working with the parents, and that's.
Yes.
I think that's my second
that's your
slide
second
here.
slide
in here.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see if I can get it
There
up
it comes. Yeah.
Strong parent support system. I think that's critically important, and I chose my words here very specifically. Parent support system. It's not a matter of having parents come in for a PTO meeting or whatever it may be, or the parent teachers conference. It's a deep commitment on the part of the school to bring the parents into the educational process and support them in whatever way they can. Having, there's school districts that have parents academies that are providing them with background on even if they only have an 8th grade education, what can they do to help their child? How can they approach that? They're having homework sessions for parents. They're having parents' lounges. More schools are creating parents' lounges where parents really are feeling invited into the school, a part of the school. I know a school here in the state that's just doing a phenomenal job. They have parents all over that school. That school has transformed itself in 2 years. I mean, it's remarkable
wow.
what's happened
Yeah.
because of the total integration of the parents and the receptivity and the invitation to be
Yeah.
in the school,
Yeah.
as well as the corporate community has been invited. They have so many people there, and they've got people coordinating that. So they're not running around helter-skelter, and we know we can't do that. But they are there. The parents are serving a role, as we talked about earlier. The corporate partners are serving a role, and they have transformed that school in 2 years. Unbelievable. I mean, you'd be astonished to see what they've done in that. So parent support, it's not the typical things, it's not the politically correct things to do. We really need to work hard to engage them. It's for us going out to them as well. I know different school districts, obviously, at the beginning of school, some of them, the teachers will go around in a bus to visit the community.
Yeah.
Well, the question that I have, and I know this does happen, and some it doesn't happen. Do they ever get off the bus? Do they ever knock on the door and say hello to mom and dad, or whomever is there? It's getting them and letting those parents know they deeply care about their child, whomever it is, being successful. So it's really that concentrated effort.
This is a challenge because, I mean, you know this better than any of us here, I think, Sandy, about parents who didn't succeed in school do not want to cross that threshold. And so what can schools do if they can't get the parents in? What's the first step about getting this engagement with parents where they would feel comfortable with the teachers and others as people before they set foot in that building?
Exactly. Marty, as educators, I think we're often guilty of speaking in code, having our own language. We have to realize that many of these parents may not have had a perfect experience in school themselves. And so we have to go beyond our normal 8 to 3:30 routine in order to overcome that, to let them know that we have the same interest in their child as they have, and that whatever history is, right now the child's the focus, as Dean Allen pointed out in his graphic.
Yeah.
I think in the long run, again, we're going to see our life get easier as teachers
Yeah.
if these other things are integrated
Oh,
into the
yes.
whole system. It's not going to make our jobs harder. It's going to make our jobs easier, and that success will come with it. I've seen it. I've seen it many, many times now in school districts that aren't implementing all 8 of these things, but implementing several of them. You can't just do one of them. But where they're having that, they're having great success, and the teachers are the greatest advocates after a couple of years for seeing how it transforms what they can do inside the classroom.
Well, this is a huge one, and we all know about the research about parent involvement and success in school. So what do we got next here?
Reading at grade level. Obviously, what do I need to say? That's, again, one of the most important elements there is making sure that we are providing the parents the understanding of how they can help and how they can encourage their children to read, making sure all teachers are adequately prepared to address reading issues. I mean, we've got reading specialists in every school. We need to continue to have those, but also every teacher needs to have a rudimentary understanding of how they can support the special reading programs that exist in a school. We have family literacy programs. I know here in South Carolina, we have several family literacy programs, very successful. In fact, I had a superintendent tell me a year or so ago the most successful thing they have going on in their school district is their family literacy program. Those things make a huge difference. But again, I did ask how many schools do you have, and they gave me the number, and the family literacy program was only in a small percentage of them, rather than in all of them, just because of finances and resources. That's where we need to be creative and build those coalitions and see how we can make sure it's in all of those schools, not just in the select ones. Obviously, the schools that need it the most is where they're at, but probably they could be in every school and be beneficial.
And when you look at these first 3 suggestions that you have here, they do focus so much on the early ages. So many people think dropout prevention deals with those middle and high school kids, but we're looking right here at the foundation. And without this good, strong foundation, we will have those problems if we don't.
Well, if you
figure
look
it out.
at, if you go back to that school district I mentioned that had more than 50% of their young people entering first grade 12 to 18 months behind, you can predict who the dropouts are going to be right
Sure.
there,
Yeah. Yeah.
first grade.
They
You
can never actually catch up.
Right.
That's the thing.
very
It's a daunting task even.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absenteeism is
Oh,
an
boy.
issue. Yeah, I know you folks in National Dropout Prevention Center study this constantly. Absenteeism has to be addressed. There are school districts that are having, again, back to the civic organizations, they have the responsibility of, Johnny's not in school today. They have the responsibility of calling or going to the home, finding out why. Is there anything they can do to help? Obviously, there are, confidentiality issues and there's protections that have to be put in place. It is being done, though. It is being done. It's being done effectively, where certainly the privacy of the family is being protected. But it's addressing that. If you can reduce that absenteeism, we're seeing student achievement go up tremendously.
Oh, absolutely.
So that has to be a concerted effort, and there are different school districts that have taken different approaches, brought in other organizations, whomever it may be, that want to help, and this is a very concrete way of them being a part of the educational process. Them assuming that reinforcing action that I spoke about,
Yep.
that's an action that one group can take for the school district, and they'll run it for themselves. It does take time to set it up and go through the procedures of protecting the child and the family.
And Dean Allen, school attendance is something of a community norm. There are some communities where the norm that's reflected by all the adults is, in this community, we all go to school when we can. There are other communities where the norm is, we go to school when we want to. And that's an adult message that a group of adults can communicate to the youth.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but we have a phrase we talk about: educationally friendly communities, and building educationally friendly communities. And what does that mean? That's where the community becomes an advocate. And Sandy, I think you and I were talking the other day, in a community that you're aware of, where they have placards and they have rewards and awards for different achievements, and making sure in the local business, in their front window, they're showing some achievement that's going on, or the focus on where are you going to college, or what are you doing after you graduate from high school. It's never are you going to graduate from high school. What are you going to do after you graduate from high school, or which college are you looking into? It's an expectation. It's building those expectations and letting young people know that they are capable. We have in every state, we have young people that have never stepped on a college campus. They think it's the most foreign thing for them that there ever was. That's just not acceptable. We need to expose them more. We do that here at Clemson. We expose a lot of young people who have never ever been out of their home, community, and opening up their eyes. That you could be here.
Yeah, but the community is even beyond the town borders as far as, and those of you who are out there in higher ed, I hope that everybody is inviting young people to come to the campus. What we got next?
Let me see. Yeah, obviously the mentoring program is critical, and all kinds of organizations and groups can be involved in this process. Students need to have mentors. We see it, in every school there are mentors there, but to build a comprehensive program that is really well coordinated, and every student that needs support and needs adult involvement is getting that. And again, it makes a tremendous difference in a young person's life if we have that going on. And there's a variety of different systems that are in place for doing that. And the business community has come to the fore in terms of that, where they're lending their staff to be engaged in that, and the
mentoring types of
even the
things.
business-friendly education systems is, businesses that are allowing their employees who are parents, giving them, they give. I know there are businesses that give them a certain number of hours a year that they can go to their student-teacher conference. Allowing them to be engaged as mentors as a part of their normal business day. They're volunteering that, volunteering the time that they're still on the payroll for doing that. But the business is realizing this is critical for our success, because these are the young people that we're going to be employing. So they're certainly building.
So
into
everybody's
that.
getting that message.
Yeah, everybody has a role, as we've talked about.
Ah,
Yeah,
one of the
well.
favorites. So yes.
You know, we close the gap throughout the school year. You know, young people, if you looked at it, you can see, you know, we're closing the gap, and then from June to August again, that gap opens up again, especially for young people growing up in impoverished communities. You know, we've got to address that, and more school districts are doing that. We're seeing that realization that young people are losing what was provided to them in the last 9-10 months through those summer months because they don't have the opportunity. You know, the young people from well-to-do families are getting those exposures, but the young people from the disadvantaged families are not. So what can we do with a summer enrichment program, which is critical, and a lot of school districts are moving in that direction. The after-school, you know, the after-school programs
Yes.
have been around for many years now. We're seeing those being more perfected, and we're seeing much greater integration with the day school. I saw this even 40 years ago, unfortunately, you know, where after-school programs were merely an extension of the school day. I think that's a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
Terrible mistake. It's got to be a distinct difference. The child needs to understand that this is a totally different experience for them. It has educational value, but they see it through a much more, as what we call an informal educational learning experience. Young people learn just as much, and in fact there's literature to support the informal education experience is just as effective as the formal education experience in certain areas, okay, not in every area. But we need to build those after-school programs to excite these young people. Still, it has an educational component. Obviously, we can still have the tutorials, we can have the homework sessions, but there's got to be a clear break to that. And it's got to be coordinated with the teachers in the public schools to get the greatest effect on it.
Right.
But that's a critical area. These, obviously, I think they're all critical.
They are. I mean, we could do a program and have done on several of these actually.
Right.
Sure.
Well, I mean, you folks with the Dropout Prevention Center, you know, these 8 are probably 8 of your 15
They are.
solutions.
They
you
are.
know, so this isn't foreign to you.
No, it's not.
And Bob Eichert last week in his webcast, you know, he brought a lot of the
did.
same issues
He did.
in here. This one was one that I saw the effects of having a seamless system of public services when I was running the Center for Community Education in Maryland, where we had public, in most cases it was a high school. We had public high schools that had almost every human service that you could think of, from the health department, even juvenile justice, social services, welfare, were all on that high school campus.
Yeah.
It made an incredible difference
Yeah.
because, you know, the most obvious factors in healthcare. Rather than mom or dad having to take work off to get Johnny from school, to take him to the dentist or doctor or wherever, Johnny loses a half a school day, mom and dad lose a half a day's pay. This way, having an integrated system in the schools where they can go across the hall to the healthcare center keeps mom and dad from having to take so much time off. It keeps Johnny from losing a half a day of school. It's right there. It's open to the public. It's open to the communities. You know, we're seeing it. We're seeing it here in South Carolina. This is evolving a little bit, having these integrated human service systems right on our campus. That was one of the major goals of community education 40 years ago. It was happening, and then again, we went in another direction. for
Well, we
some
do.
reason.
I think we just wouldn't. We'd be remiss if we didn't point out that communities in schools, which is one of the
Right.
links on the website, does do that very thing.
Right.
And yet,
Very
they're,
much
you know,
so.
they're not every school, but they do. They are doing it and making an effort. And I know it's making a difference with them as well. Okay, we got
And my last one.
last one. Yeah.
If I can get it up there. And this was, Bob Eichhorn really talked about this last week. This is what your whole session was about, alternative school models. You know, I went to an education conference a couple of years back, and I was sitting in a session about alternative schools, and I raised my hand and I said, why do we call this the alternative school model? Why isn't this the school model? You know, and I still feel that way. I mean, so many things that we talk about with our alternative school efforts for at-risk youth really are critically important elements for any child, for any young person, and we should be incorporating those into the total system. Once it became a part of the system, it wouldn't be so onerous to have that happen. It wouldn't be so expensive. It wouldn't take so many resources. It wouldn't take so much time. It's that transition period, yes, there's no doubt about it. But ultimately, you know, we're here to help young people grow and develop. We've got to look at those things that are really going to make a difference. You know, yes, we've had some improvement the last 10 years from what 73% graduation rate to 78, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
But you know, we need to be at 90%. And is that trend going to continue? Is it going to take us another 20 years or 30 years to do that? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. So these are all things that are valuable. They're being done. Unfortunately, it's still the exception to the rule. It's a commitment on a part of a community to work together. It's building that collective impact. It's becoming the very popular phrase of today. I love that terminology. I think we've got to put aside our own personal interests and look at the welfare and the benefits for the child in that. So as we try to incorporate these items, I think we'll see great success inside the classroom as a result of
the
all of
ripple
these
effect.
efforts. And obviously some of these are inside the classroom as well, as you speak of reading and other things.
You know, Dean
so-
Allen, I can't help but notice that the majority of the strategies that you recommend and the points you've made are things that typically do not cost money. A few do, but most do not. Most are matters of will, determination, energy, and unity of purpose by all the people that surround that child.
Commitment and unity of purpose, Sandy, absolutely. And there's no question about it. And those school districts that have been able to achieve that have been very successful. And it does take a champion. It takes several champions. And it takes dedication. There are no silver bullets. It is hard work, but the rewards are tremendous. When you see that young person graduating that, you know, 5 years ago, you were saying, wow, I'm not sure this is going to happen. That's very rewarding, and we all, you know, we all get chills when we
Yes.
think about
Absolutely.
how we're helping these young people.
We do.
Yeah.
You know, we do have several more. I'm not going to hit all of them because there are so many, and some actually have been answered during the time since they were written. But the fact that we've known, this is Rob from Minnesota, that various things like apprenticeships, active learning, service learning, career and tech, these engage students and they have prevented youth from dropping out for years. Yet, how do we reverse? Okay, this is the big world. We're in the community ed world, which is this idyllic world I've been living in for the last hour listening to you. But out there in the real world, we're dealing with the obsession with testing and accountability. Okay, what do we do about this? How can we deal with this as communities? How can we involve young people in this? Because they would probably like school a whole lot more if they were doing this stuff. How do we, what are your suggestions for how we could deal with this world we're living in?
You know, we got that started. I'll even go back to Nation at Risk again. You know, and that document created such an effort on, you know, standards base and building requirements inside the classroom. It really was misdirected, unfortunately, and we've held on to that. You know, we keep tweaking around the edges. You know, we've got to stop tweaking around the edges. And education, I don't know how many people believe or even are aware of just the statement that we showed earlier, where we look at the out-of-school factors are the most dominant factors in terms of a child's success.
Exactly.
How many people are really aware of that fact? You know, if that message got out more, then it would help to turn the tide. You know, there's still this tremendous interest in testing. You know, and the performance. It's unfortunate. You know, that's still something that we hold on to. The testing will come, ironically. If we do these things, the testing will come. But don't put the focus on the testing, put the focus on these items to allow the child to be successful. And Marty, I keep harping on the same answer, but maybe it's because I've been in education almost my entire life. You know, we've got to educate the public more. We have to educate our school boards. I mean, our school boards need to understand it's not just about teachers. It's about the community being engaged in the process. And the school boards should be the leaders in that process. They should be leading this community coalition building. You know, and I've seen some great school boards. I've seen some school boards that unfortunately still have a very narrow view, and they put the, you know, they believe that whatever happens has got to happen inside the classroom, and they think it's a waste of time. These other areas possibly, that's unfortunate, and it comes down to just not having the exposure. We have taken this track for 30 years that really hasn't been extremely successful. It's time for a change, folks. It's time for a change. We've got to do things differently. Yeah.
You know, Dean Allen, we often catch ourselves thinking, well, I've got to live by the metrics, which are the test scores and the numbers. But yet, if we do these somewhat distant from the numbers task, then the numbers will reflect what we're looking for.
Right.
That's right. That's right. You know, listeners out there, I'm talking to you. Take this program and these great resources and help your community get awareness raising, because that's what we kind of hope for with Solutions, that we're reaching lots of communities out there, raising their awareness about various solutions. And here is a whole structure where everybody can be involved. So we're hoping to hear from you that you can do that. Larry, there are other questions which I will email to you. I apologize that we couldn't get to all of them, and we do love that you're writing to us, but we can only do what we can do within our time restraints. So, you know, Sandy, we might be getting to the end here.
We are, Marty. Dean Allen, you've been a wonderful guest, a great presenter. We appreciate it. I think you've obviously spurred a lot of thought, a lot of interest from around the country. And listeners, we certainly appreciate you tuning in, and tell your friends. These webcasts are archived.
That's right.
We think we have hundreds of viewers at this moment. We have many more than that after the fact on our website. So we encourage you to go to that website. Marty, I can't let us end without mentioning our next Solutions broadcast, if I may.
You must. You absolutely must.
June the 4th is our next Solutions broadcast. Our guest will be Dr. Mark Wilson, Dean Allen, a Clemson graduate.
I know
Dr. Mark Wilson, the 2009 National Secondary Principal of the Year. His topic will be leading a school where students don't want to drop out. So June the 4th, 3:30.
So yeah, we're all taking May off. We won't tell everybody what we're doing, but we're taking a break. But that's going to be a great one and a good follow-up. And we've been learning so many things over the last several programs that we're going to throw questions at Dr. Wilson based on this discussion today. Thank you so much for being with us.
I've enjoyed it very much.
You know, I've been wanting this to happen for a really long time, and so we got you, and it was so terrific to have you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marty.
And now we have our very famous. You're all done. We're all done because the adults, including me, are going to go off now. But I would like to introduce the last word, because we've got students from the Call Me Mister who are going to have the last word today. Michael Miller and Cambridge Gamble, two young men who are going to be excellent teachers someday. Why don't we? Do you have anything you want to say about that before we go to it?
The Misters, they epitomize what we need as teachers. You know, they're servant leaders. The child, the student is put first. These young men know how to organize and engage the community and especially the parents in the educational process of their students. The Misters do an outstanding job. I can't say enough about them.
And none of us can. I mean, I love them dearly. And I will say at the credits, we have the website link for you to learn more about Call Me Mister, which is in, I don't know, over 20 colleges and universities across this southern region.
It started right here at Clemson University.
It started right here. This is the place. Okay, so zip the lip, Marty, and let it go. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, my name is Mr. Michael Miller. I'm from Orangeburg, South Carolina. I'm also a student here at Clemson University, and my major is elementary education. I had a favorite teacher just like anyone else did. And what made my favorite teacher was not that the teacher could teach more or teach better than my other teachers, but it was simply because me and him had a stronger relationship. And one thing Call Me Mister instills within us is that in order to teach a child, you must reach the child. And if we're going to reach the child, we have to put in time, we have to put in effort to get or establish a relationship with that child. And it's as simple as, how can I teach somebody, or how can I learn from someone who I don't know? And so actually putting time in and inside the classroom and outside the classroom, and building a relationship with that child, letting that child know that, hey, I really do care about you, and I care about your well-being, and I care about your education, really makes a difference inside the classroom.
Hello, my name is Mr. Cambridge Gamble, and I am a freshman elementary education major from Greeleyville, South Carolina, and I am in the Call Me Mr. program, and I'm going to discuss some aspects of my K-12 experience. My K-12 experience was pretty much different from a lot of my classmates. I enjoyed going to school, and that's not, you don't hear that a lot these days. Most people have one favorite teacher, but I had three. My favorite teacher was in 4th grade. He was my first male teacher, the only male in the school. He was just a different type of teacher. Most teachers were friendly, and if you did your work, they encouraged you to do the work, but they were kind of lenient towards work. But this teacher, he was strict. He was like, you're going to get your work done, and you're going to be somebody. So it was a great motivation. So every day in 4th grade, I was excited to come to school, to find someone that is just as motivated as in school and what I'm doing as he was. That was just a really good thing.
School is a great place to be. Check it out.